Top 10 Dangerous Criminals in the World. 10. Jeffrey Dahmer, an American serial killer and sex offender, was born on May 21, 1960. Between the years of 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 17 males in a truly horrific fashion. Rape, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism were all parts of his modus operandi. Dahmer attended college that fall but dropped out due to his alcoholism. After that, his father forced him to enlist in the army, where he served as a combat medic in Germany from 1979 to 1981. Dahmer was indicted on 15 murder charges and the trial began on January 30, 1992. Even though the evidence against him was overwhelming, Dahmer pled insanity as his defense due to the nature of his incredibly disturbing and uncontrollable impulses. Following 2 weeks of trial, the court declared him sane and guilty on 15 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 15 life terms, for a total of 957 years in prison. On November 28, 1994, an inmate as they cleaned one of the prison showers. Dahmer was found still alive but died on the way to the hospital from severe head trauma. A man named H. Holmes was quietly building a killing castle. As a businessman and hotel owner, Holmes seemed to be a successful and respected member of society. But behind the facade, he was a ruthless serial killer who preyed on the unsuspecting. Holmes built a hotel specifically designed for murder, complete with soundproof rooms, secret passages, and trap doors. He would lure victims, mostly young women, to the hotel, where he would kill them in various ways, such as suffocation, hanging, or even gas chambers. He then would dispose of the bodies in the hotel's basement, which he had converted into a crematorium. Holmes was eventually caught and put on trial for his crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Although it is believed he killed many people, only 9 deaths were confirmed. He confessed to 27 murders, but it is estimated that the actual number of victims could be as high as 200. Holmes was hanged on May 7, 1896. His killing castle was demolished, but the memory of his gruesome crimes lives on as a chilling reminder of the true evil that can lurk behind a friendly facade. The remote villages of South America, a man named Pedro Lopez preyed on the vulnerable. Monster of the Andes. Lopez is believed to have killed over 300 young girls, many of them from indigenous tribes. Lopez was eventually arrested in 1980 and admitted to killing 110 girls, but authorities believe the true number of victims could be much higher. He was sentenced to life in prison in Ecuador. In the 1970s, a man named Ted Bundy terrorized the Pacific Northwest, leaving a trail of victims in his wake. Bundy was a charismatic and intelligent man, but behind the facade, he was a sadistic serial killer who preyed on young women. Bundy was arrested in 1978 and confessed to 30 murders, although the true number of victims may be higher. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. He was executed by an electric chair in 1989. The late 1990s, the city of Philadelphia was rocked by the brutal murder of 5-year-old Iriana De Jesus. The prime suspect in the case was a man named Alexis Flores, a Honduran national who had fled to the United States illegally. Flores was arrested in 2000 and was found guilty of the abduction, rape, and murder of Iriana De Jesus. He was sentenced to death in 2002. Flores was captured in Honduras in 2007 after being on the run for several years. He was then extradited to the United States to face trial for the murder. Ruja Ignatova, a charismatic businesswoman from Bulgaria, founded a company called OneCoin. She promised investors huge returns on their investments and convinced millions of people to invest their savings in the company. But behind the facade, Ignatova was running a Ponzi scheme that would leave investors defrauded and out of millions of dollars. Ignatova disappeared in 2017, and it was later revealed that she had fled to avoid prosecution. She was arrested in Germany in 2019 and is currently awaiting trial on charges of fraud and money laundering. The total amount defrauded by Ignatova's scheme is estimated to be around $4 billion. For inches the mid-1990s, O.J. Simpson, a former NFL player and popular television personality, stood trial for the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. The trial captivated the nation and is remembered as one of the most high-profile and controversial criminal cases in American history. Simpson was acquitted of the murders in a criminal trial in 1995, but a civil jury later found him liable for the deaths and ordered him to pay millions of dollars in damages to the victims' families. Despite the acquittal, many people believe that Simpson was guilty of the murders, and the case continues to be a subject of public debate and discussion. Simpson was later arrested and convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping in 2007 and served time in prison for those crimes. 2002, the Washington, D.C. area was held in a grip of fear as a series of seemingly random shootings occurred, leaving residents on edge and law enforcement scrambling for answers. The shooters, later identified as John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo, came to be known as the Beltway Snipers. Muhammad and Malvo killed 10 people and injured 3 others in a 3-week shooting spree. They targeted victims in various locations such as gas stations, parking lots, and shopping centers, using a high-powered rifle to carry out the attacks. The 2 were finally caught at a rest stop in Maryland and were arrested. Muhammad was sentenced to death and executed in 2009, while Malvo was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Beltway sniper attacks were one of the most notable criminal cases in recent American history, and the impact of the crime is still felt by the victims and the communities affected. In the 1940s, Adolf Eichmann was a key player in the implementation of the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime. Eichmann was in charge of the transportation of Jews to concentration and extermination camps, and is considered one of the chief architects of the Holocaust. After World War II, Eichmann went into hiding but was eventually captured by the Israeli Mossad in 1960. He was brought to trial in Israel in 1961, where he was found guilty of crimes against humanity and war crimes. He was sentenced to death and hanged in 1962. One in the quiet town of Hyde, England, a dark secret lurked behind closed doors. Harold Shipman, a respected GP, was known and trusted by many in the community. But his actions would shock the world and leave a trail of devastation in his wake. Shipman was convicted of murdering 15 of his patients, but it is believed that the true number of victims could be as high as 250. He was found guilty of using lethal injections of diamorphine to end the lives of his patients, many of whom were vulnerable and elderly. Shipman was sentenced to life in prison, but in 2004, he was found hanged in his cell. The true extent of his crimes may never be known, but the families of his victims will never forget the betrayal of trust committed by this monster in the guise of a doctor.